They said that there's something about Timor-Leste, and a lot of them worked in different countries, but they said when they come to Timor, when they leave, they feel like there's a hole in their heart. It's just immediate love for this country.
Bon dia, welcome to Exploring Timor-Leste, the podcast that talks about Southeast Asia's best kept travel secret. I'm your host Jonty, and I'll share first-hand insights, expert interviews and practical travel tips. Whether you're a traveller, a culture lover or just curious about places rarely covered in the mainstream, you're in the right place. Let's explore Timor-Leste. Well, I'm delighted to welcome our first guest on the podcast today, which is Alcino Da Silva. He has many years of experience in the hospitality and tourism industry, and it's a real pleasure for him to join us today. I really appreciate your time today. So I'd like to ask you a few questions, just starting off with a little bit about where did you grow up in Timor-Leste? Give us a little bit of an idea of your background.
Good morning to you, Jonty, and thank you for the opportunity to talk with you and being your first guest. I grew up in Dili, the capital city of Timor-Leste. I was here for about 8 years before we had the civil unrest in 1975, and then off to Darwin, and then stayed in Sydney for about 24 years before returning back to Timor-Leste in 2000, just after the referendum. And I've been here ever since, so 25 years basically, on and off. A lot of changes. When you talk to different people coming at different stages of Timor-Leste, sometimes they think it's underdeveloped, but from day one, when I dropped in here in 2000, there was absolutely nothing. A lot of the buildings were destroyed, and there was no government, there's nothing in place. So when you look at where it is today, people sometimes underestimate what Timor's gone through, but a lot of efforts have been put in place to bring Timor-Leste to where it is today.
It's an incredible story of Timor-Leste, and people forget how new a country it is and how far it has progressed. Hopefully later this year it will be joining ASEAN, so that's a great milestone in this new
and it's
country.
done. We've had hiccups along the way, but we haven't fallen. And a lot of people sometimes expect that Timor-Leste to be classed as a failed state and whatever, but definitely it's not. While we have differences in political opinions and here and there, but at the end of the day, I think that there is a common thing is that Timor suffered a lot over the years. We've had colonial rule, we'll have Indonesian occupation. I don't think it's going to go back to where like it was in 75 or in 99. People have grown a lot smarter and wiser since then.
So you're a successful Timorese businessman with a few different fingers in different pies. What if you meet somebody, what would you say that you do?
I don't even know what I do sometimes. We just do things here. You know, honestly, I just remember where I come from. I used to be a public servant in Australia. I wasn't an entrepreneur, if you say it, but coming here, Timor gives a lot of opportunities. And if you fail small. If you make it, you make it. Just wasn't something I thought about. But initially, we started a security business at that time because we catered a lot for the UN personnel. That grew very well. I ended up employing like 2,500 employees. And then by the time in 2006-7, I thought maybe it was time to move on to other businesses. So started to do investment in villas, and we have apartments and then restaurants. Having a few restaurants here, it doesn't make you a millionaire overnight, but it provides, good income every month.
How would you describe Timor-Leste to somebody who's never been?
People are cautious when they hear the word Timor-Leste because I think most of the time when you Google it, it comes up as conflict and unstable government and all that. But the reality is, and I think you would agree with me, most visitors that come here love the place. They fall in love with the place and the people here. The good thing is that you can come here and expect the unexpected, basically. You probably get off the plane and feel the 33-degree heat and thinking, wow, what am I doing here? Every step of the way of your journey here is an experience. When you come here, you can visit many places that are untouched by tourists. Sometimes there are negative impacts of having too many tourists visiting your country. So at the moment, it's virgin. You can come and experience Timor-Leste as you would probably do in Bali like 40 or 50 years ago. So you can make a comparison if you come now as you were if you did come in 2000. And you come now, it's not the same. And probably another 10, 15 years, you'll find the Timor-Leste Dili in particular will change a lot.
I agree. It's quite hard these days to find somewhere that doesn't already have a large number of tourists or tourist infrastructure. And I would agree with your point. When I arrived in Timor-Leste, I didn't really know much about Timor-Leste, and I was just constantly surprised in a good way at the things that I found and the things I managed to do there. And it's definitely, for better or worse, everything in Timor is a memorable experience.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about what are some of your favorite places in Timor-Leste and what makes them so special to you.
I think it's changing. I used to like Dili, but as you get older, I think it depends on your taste. But I tend to spend more time in Likisa. I have a place there. It's quiet. For me, I prefer that. But for me, it depends on the visitor. It depends on the person. Because Timor, it's like having different countries in one country. And then the geography is all different too. Like, it provides different expectations depending on where you go and how you tailor your holiday here. But I think it's better to initially maybe go through a travel agent, like a local travel agent, and tie up a package so that you can have an introduction to Timor Leste. That's how I see it. But where my favorite place is anything outside Dili.
So the rest of the country, other than
The
Dili.
rest of the country is beautiful. It's quiet, pristine. There's, if you like peace, and you actually sit down and just let your mind at rest. Honestly, Jonty, sometimes it's hectic here. I don't get much sleep in Delhi. So when I go to Likisa, I do have a 30-minute nap in the car. So
You're not
I get,
driving, I
no, I'm not driving.
hope.
That's why I prefer not to drive. I get my staff to drive my car. So I get a 30-minute nap in my car because it's so peaceful. And you know, when you're looking out in the ocean, if you have an ocean driving, it's beautiful.
Tell us a little bit about Likisar for somebody who's not visited. What can they expect to see there?
Lakeside provides a lot of different environment. When you go past Dili, you'll see the coast on the right hand side, and then if you look to the left, you'll probably see the mountains. To me, Lakeside is an historical place as well. An old prison there in Aipelu. I think it was established in the early 1900s. And I believe my grandfather also came here in 1927 and was posted in Aipelu. My grandfather was Portuguese. So he came out here. He left Portugal in 1924 and must have gone around different places, different colonies of Portugal. And then they end up arriving in Timor, in Aipelu, back in 1927. So it's interesting for me to go back to Likisa. There's a historical connection with the family as well. Yeah, and the people are nice. And you can grow basically anything also in all around Timor. But in Likisa, it's famous for custard apple, is it? Ayata, papaya, bananas. It's quite good.
So, on the theme of food, as you mentioned just now and earlier, so what are some of your favorite Timorese dishes? So, if you had a visitor to Timor, what would you recommend that they eat?
Timorese food, we normally have mainly vegetables in our diet. So the famous, what we have is kangkong. That's very nice. A lot of people eat that. Because we had like different colonizers all the years. So we've had Arabic influence, Portuguese influence. There's also fusion of foods here in Timor, Chinese influence. So you can be cooking one thing depending on different backgrounds. They have different taste. But yeah, so food is paramount here. When you come to Timor, it doesn't matter where you are, food always tastes nice. It's a basic food, not chef style quality food. It's very tasty. So a lot of my diet includes vegetables and fish. Fish is common here as well.
What are some local restaurants that you'd
We
recommend?
They come and go over the years, Jonty. A lot of good restaurants have opened and some have closed and some have moved on elsewhere. But basically, depends on your taste. So if you have Chinese food, there's a lot of Chinese restaurants here. My favorite is the Great Wall. Then there's the Malaysian restaurants. I think there's Ocean View. There's a touch of Malaysian food there. We serve Indonesian style. Seafood in our restaurants. I have a few. So the one in Likisa, we try to incorporate a lot of the local
So, what's the
products
name
there.
of that one?
Alma Dumar. I opened that in 2020, so we've been operating there for 5 years. But when you look at food, there's Na Casa also. There's a lady there. Her name is Ida. She's a spectacular cook. Then
So
there's Early
Nakasa's in
Khan.
Dili.
Yeah, so most of these restaurants are in Dili. So when you go to the districts, the municipios, you'll probably come across a lot of the local restaurants there. But as I said, a lot of them are quite cheap and very tasty. But don't expect chef style quality food, but it's edible and it's healthy.
A visitor to Timor-Leste, if they
Yes.
really want to understand traditional Timorese culture, what would you recommend that they do, or where they could go to understand, or maybe you could explain a little bit
Yeah.
about your culture?
For me, it's like this. If you look at the history of Timor, we're a very religious country, but we also believe animus as well, a lot of that. So there's the country has it's rich in both our belief in Catholicism and also in our traditional culture. So when people arrive here, the first place you probably go to is Cristo Rey. It's a nice walk. It's east of Dili, about probably 6, 7 kilometers from the main city. So you can walk up to the Christ statue there, or can visit some of the cathedrals in Dili, because I think they said after Vatican, Timor Leste is the most populous Catholic nation in the world. So that's one. So you'll probably see a lot of procession here, a lot of praying. We also have here in Campo Alo, there's a masjid there. So there's a small percentage of Muslim people here. And it's a nice place to visit also, because you have a lot of these stalls that sell Indonesian food there.
The
Um,
An-Nur Mosque. Yeah, there's always people selling food outside the mosque.
yeah, it's different. Different municipios, different family heritages, they have different customs. What I recommend is tourists to come and talk to locals and get to know more about our culture, because it's interesting. People here like to tell stories too. By talking to people, you get to hear their side of the story, their history, their culture.
Could you explain a little bit about Umalulik, what they are? Just
Yeah,
to put you on the spot.
but it's basically the origin of us, our families, and our history. We normally, in each of our generations, we have our own worship to the nature. We call it natureza, and then we built this umalulik to protect the family and to conduct every year, every just to honor the dead, to ask for protection for those that are living and to guide us. If we make mistakes throughout the year or whatever, sometimes we need to fix all that. And if there's family issues and things like that, it can be resolved. And we also make reference to the Umalulik. So it's more like a sacred site for families and the origin of families and where they come from. It's an important part of our culture here, the Umalulik. And you find it's different, there's different styles, the different shapes of building depending on which part of Timor you go to. But the most common one you probably see is the one they call it the Los Palos one. But if you go to different areas, they built it differently using local material.
It's quite interesting how much they vary. Like the ones in the Kusi were quite different to the ones out in Los Palos or in
In
Vekeke or different parts
Swai,
of the country.
yeah,
Shuai,
Swai
yeah. So it
also.
is. You don't see many in Dili, but when you get outside of Dili, you will see a lot of Umalulik as you travel around Timor Leste. Do you have any tips for people in terms of getting around Timor Leste? So obviously you can fly into Dili, and that's where the international airport is. That's relatively straightforward. But if you want to explore the rest of the country, how would you suggest that people could best do that?
A lot of people just rent cars, four-wheel drive, so you can do like adventure driving. Most of the roads connecting the cities are pretty good. However, if you want to go off trail a bit, then you probably need a four-wheel drive. And you can easily hire that now. There's a lot of car hire places in Delhi. Normally, cars with insurance, they probably come at around between 90 and $120 a day. US. And the driver, I think if you can include drivers, is $20 a day. And then you have to provide food and probably accommodation if you're staying overnight, different places.
I would say, from my experience, having ridden a motorbike in Timor Leste for the best part of a year, I would
Yeah,
probably recommend that people do get a local driver, unless you're familiar with driving on
yeah,
Southeast Asian roads with a few more potholes thrown in. Then
yeah.
it can be quite a challenging place for
It's it,
visitors. But so a local driver, particularly also the lack of signage, is quite an adventure kind of destination. So a local driver will know the best
yes,
ways to get places.
it's highly recommended. And it gives you comfort too when you have someone driving, then you can have the opportunity to just look around at different places.
Exactly, you can
So
relax, you can
yeah,
enjoy the view,
relax, more relaxed.
and I say there's always something happening in Timor. So if you're traveling around the country, it's great just to look out the window and see life happening. And there's always something
Mm,
unusual or something
catches
that
your eye,
catches your
yeah.
eye. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's like different rock formation or different shaped trees, or I don't know. I
The chickens
enjoy
running out across the road, or
or
the dogs
chickens
running
and
around, or cows, or the
or
water
pigs.
buffalo.
Yes, but not as often now. I think when you came in the early years, I guess there were a lot of that, but now it's a lot better. It's more controlled. But having said that, you still have to be alert for those kind of things
You do.
and the
So
odd potholes.
the odd pothole, correct. We mentioned at the beginning just around the kind of safety side of things, and that I think you're right is a big misconception that people have about Timor Leste, that they have safety concerns. And I can speak from my own experience that it is a very safe place to explore, and it's a lot more stable than the media may make out.
It's very stable. A lot of people travel the country alone. You don't get harassed or anything like that. And the odd occasion, maybe if there's an incident, I think it can be managed here also. I think it's quite safe here, although it says it's come from war-torn country, but it's quite stable. It's quite peaceful here. So I highly recommend it if you come here. And you just got to be, I think, cautious about what you do. A lot of the security, you have to self-reflect and realize, because you have to understand also, John, the initial phases also, we had a lot of different foreigners here, from the UN, and I don't recommend going to beaches with G-strings and bikinis and things like that. It's not part of for us here. It's different in Bali, but in Timor, I think it probably, because it's a Catholic country and you got to respect that. You take aware of what you're wearing and things like that here. They're a bit conservative as well. But if you're here for an adventure holiday and things like that, I think it's fine. A lot of locals will welcome you.
The welcome you get from Timor is incredible, and I think that's because there aren't huge numbers of tourists. It's almost quite unusual, but a novelty factor to see visitors, and everybody is very welcoming. And as you say, is you just
Yeah.
have to be respectful. If you're traveling to a country, you need to be respectful of their culture and traditions. And as you said, it is a very safe place. You just take your usual precautions. If you're walking around at night by yourself anywhere in the world, you're going to be at more risk than in other situations. To be honest, the biggest risk you're going to have in Dili is you might fall down a hole in the pavement rather than anybody
Yeah.
doing anything to you. So there's a different sort of risk profile, but it is certainly a safe place for people to explore. And I know people have hitchhiked around Timor Leste without any issues.
That's right. I've had a lot of my memorable moments. I think I remember a few years ago I was in Okusi and I was staying working there for a few weeks, and I really enjoyed just getting a case of beer and just sitting out at the beachfront there and having a drink and talk to your friends. You can go fishing here in Dili. A lot of people now go night fishing just on the outskirts of Dili at night. I see that's
With the
increasing a
torches,
lot.
is that where you wade out with a torch and you're trying to trap the fish?
The torch, yeah. When the sea goes out, they go looking for those, the pippies, are what they call them. Yeah, clams and things like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of activities at night and that, but not, there's very little in terms of criminalities here. So it's quite safe. That's what I want to put out to people out there. If you want to come to Timor-Leste, it's quite safe.
The key takeaway, because that's not necessarily what you read on the internet, as you mentioned earlier. Just to finish up, if a traveller could take
Okay.
away just one thing from Timor Leste, what do you hope that would be?
For me, probably it's the wow factor. When you go, not so much in Dili, but outside Dili, a lot of beautiful places. So I think bring a good camera. And then
Definitely.
when you walk away, you'd be really surprised when you look back and how beautiful those photos will be and those places and bring you back memories. There's two things too, John T. A lot of people that worked in the UN, and I spoke to a lot of them when they were here. They said there's something about Timor-Leste, and a lot of them worked in different countries, but they said when they come to Timor, when they leave, they feel like there's a hole in their heart. It's just immediate love for this country. That's one. And then some tell me that they come here and they fall in love with this country and with the people. Think that people that come here and go back, they'll feel like they'll be missing this place, honestly. I do it. Whenever I leave Timor, I come back normally less than 2 or 3 weeks because at that time I'm starting to feeling a bit bored and missing the place.
I can completely understand that. I know towards the end of my year in Dili, it can be, as somewhere to live, it can be a bit challenging in terms of the heat and the noise and the traffic and the infrastructure. And so it got a little bit frazzled towards the end. But then I got home and remarkably quickly I was homesick for Dili and missing the excitement and the buzz and the vibrancy of life there. You get perspective when you leave a place. And when you're in a place, it's harder to see it. But once you go, you're like, oh, that was such an amazing place.
That's right, Jonty. I'll tell you something. My father lived here a long time before we moved to Australia. We left. But in 1999, he said to me, after we won the referendum, he said, Alcino, you can go to Timor, but be really careful. He said, it's like a big hole there. Once you go there, it's very hard to creep out of there. It's to crawl out of the hole.
In a good way.
Yes. He said, you'll fall in love with the place and it's difficult to get out. And I said to him at that time, I said, Dad, not me. I've been living in Sydney for a while. I've got all my footy mates and this and that. So for me, it's difficult. I said, but here, 25 years later, I'm still here.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated you coming on the podcast and sharing your thoughts and experiences of Timor-Leste. I'm sure people will appreciate your insights.
Okay, thank you, Jonty, for the opportunity. And for whoever's listening, please consider if you're trying to think of a holiday, come to Timor and have an experience here.
Always a memorable experience in Timor-Leste.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Exploring Timor-Leste. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a rating or a review. It really helps more people discover the show. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me an email at exploringtimorleste@gmail.com. Until next time, obrigado ho adeus.